We'll talk about stewardship. We are fortunate here that we talk about stewardship throughout the year, but sure enough in the fall because we are beginning to look at budgets for the next year. And if you are cynical as I am, sometimes you ask as we are giving, why? What is the effect? What difference are we making? And we know there are things that happen like salaries, and I'm grateful for that, and electricity and upkeep and all of those things. And there are mission projects and there are other mission endeavors. But sometimes it is good just to hear stories and be reminded. And so today we have one who has a whole mess of stories. She said she has cut them in half, and I say tell them all, because it is the stories that shape us, that remind us that life is lived together, and that ultimately, as our God is a God of story, and we are blessed to be part of it and part of each other's. And so, Rebecca, let me invite you to come and share.
This is a first. Microphone. Very high tech. Am I on? Good morning. I am Rebecca Burns. I'm currently serving on the Missions Commission, like my dad before me, and I sing alto in the choir, like my mother before me. I was born at Patrick Air Force Base, but we moved around a bit before returning to the area for my dad to take a job in the space program in 1961. When our neighbors found out we were Presbyterian, they said, "You're coming with us on Sunday morning." And that is how 4-year-old me arrived at Riverside on a summer Sunday in 1961, along with my sister Linda, who is visiting today, and she was 6 years old. Knox Hall was our church. And so we worshiped on folding chairs in Knox, and it was designed with accordion walls that came out from the corners and made it into flex spaces, so it was a super useful design. Many of the kids that Linda and I met here became our lifelong friends. When the beautiful sanctuary building that used to stand out there was completed in 1964, our little baby sister Patricia was the first baby baptized in that new sanctuary. I have joyful memories of a childhood with Riverside kids and their parents doing life together, running around the grounds, climbing live oak trees. Where this new sanctuary is that we're in, it's just a grove of beautiful live oaks, and some of them just bent right on over. Climbing the tree was much like walking up a flight of stairs. It was really something. And sometimes we'd go down to the river and wade around and catch and release a few horseshoe crabs, little practicing marine science or something. But every one of my friends' parents treated me like one of the family, one of their own. My parents treated all of our friends the same way. Wonderful Sunday school teachers. Vacation Bible School was a full 2 weeks every summer. My mom always taught a class. In the 60s, we had some Space Center celebrities worshiping with us. John Glenn worshiped here, and Gunter Wendt and his family. I grew up with his daughters. Everybody was just somebody's mom or somebody's dad to me. I really wasn't super aware, but later I realized what vision and what energy these folks were putting into building first Knox, and then the sanctuary, and then Calvin Hall for Sunday school, just like within 10 years, boom, 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 it was a lot. In my own adulthood, eventually, Fellowship Hall would come along in the mid-'80s, and then this sanctuary in the early '90s, and it seems like one of us was always manning a shovel for a groundbreaking, but it was exciting. There was a lot of energy, a lot of Holy Spirit moving people. I remember two things that were particularly just pure joy to me, and one was listening to my mom singing in the choir every Sunday, and I sang in a kids' choir. The other one was the intellectual food that was offered to me here. We have been blessed with great preaching over the decades here, still. And this church has always, Presbyterians always let you ask questions. They encourage you to do that, and that really worked for me. But here's the thing I loved the most about growing up at Riverside. I saw people putting their faith into action. I saw generosity, volunteering, visiting, and it's powerful to see good people biblically loving their neighbors. But when you see them filled with joy as they do it, that's really powerful. And I was loved here. And I remember when Steve and I were married in 1977 in the sanctuary that was the only sanctuary then. We came to call that Riverside Hall, and that had to be demolished after a bunch of hurricane damage, sadly. But I told my parents that I would like to have our reception in Knox Hall, which still had those accordion walls. But I had seen what the Riverside Wedding Reception Committee, and Marilyn Grigsby is here, and she was running that show. I had seen what they did, and honestly, I just felt like it was beautiful, and it was my family, and I just don't know if anybody has ever had more people look with pride and joy and best wishes on them than I did that day from all of our friends, but all of my and my parents' Riverside friends surrounding us, and me and Steve that day. And then the next chapter is raising kids here, and just everything on repeat. Church members loved on my kids all the time. If you remember Louise Hurd, she literally got down on her knees at night and prayed for me and my husband Steve and our children every night. We were on her list. My kids went to Vacation Bible School. Now I was the volunteer teacher, like my mom had been. I was a deacon several times, and now my kids went with me to visit shut-ins and nursing home residents and take flowers. And my kids loved Presbyterian summer camps every summer. Owen went for 2 extra summers after he aged out so he could be an assistant counselor. He just didn't want to ever stop. And the youth group leaders here. I'm glad Mark Gordon is here today. He and Wendy were youth group leaders for my older 2, Ryan and Caroline. Also, they earned sainthood for putting up with Ryan's debating everything with them, and they still love him, and he still loves them. They took the kids to youth conferences at Montreat, and Debbie Burley also helped lead those trips, and they were life-changing. Owen was lucky enough to have Robert and Karen Ward step up as youth group leaders during his teenage years. Caroline was really listening when Riverside members would come up here and tell about mission trips, and they would talk about trips they'd made to Haiti or Merida, Mexico, or we'd pray as a congregation over the Yosts every summer before they went off to the million places they went off to every summer in Africa or Eastern Europe, or all with teen missions. So she said that when she was in college and she was invited to go to her first spring break missions trip, she said, well, of course, that's what you do, because she had seen it growing up here at Riverside. And the final chapter is that I'm still growing up here at Riverside. Haven't really stopped doing Bible study for like decades, and we have good Bible studies here. I was a few years into leading an adult Bible study here in 2004 when I was diagnosed with the cancer I've been fighting ever since. And God had been preparing my heart and growing my faith all along for this journey by surrounding me with that incredible group of believers, sharing their lives, sharing their faiths, studying the Bible together. And then that group prayed over me, and they did everything they could drum up in their imaginations to do for us, so that a friend of mine who had gone through her own cancer journey a year before said, "I want a church like yours," and she joined. I think someone at Riverside has prayed over me every single day for 20 years. There have been periods when scads of Riversiders have been praying for me. Sometimes I feel just ashamed at sucking so much prayer energy out of this congregation as I have. But when I feel that way, God taps me on the shoulder and says, "You do know what my grace is like, right? Lavish, unearned?" And I say, "Oh yes, okay, thank you. I'm still learning. Riverside is still teaching me." And finally, I just have a little story that, to me, this is Riverside. It takes place outside of these walls, which is, I think, where the very best Riverside stories take place. But my husband and I were in this terrible car accident in 2020. Steve was discharged first with a broken leg, and Riverside people just immediately signed up on a list. They brought him food, groceries, meals, because he couldn't drive. And whenever one of our kids wasn't there in the house with him, Riverside was taking care of Steve. When I was transported to Sea Pines, wrapped up like a mummy, the visits commenced big time from Riverside people. And my ladies were so kind and loving to me, but there was a lady in the bed next to me, and they just adopted her. She became part of the family. And they would leave, and she would go, who are these people? And I would say, "Well, that's my church." And ultimately, one night in the dark between beds, Janet said, "Well, I left the church many years ago, decades, and I haven't been back, but I want a church like yours." And we prayed about her finding a good church in Titusville, where she was going to go after discharge to live near her daughter. And that's exactly what she and her daughter sought to do. And seeing my ladies change a heart like that was powerful. I want a church like that. And I've been blessed to be in a church like that for 6 decades. I love this church so much. And I know you do too. So I'll say, please support Riverside, this special church, with your time, your talents, your pledges, because I have stories from years ago, but God's story of Riverside is right now. It's this group of us in 2023, soon to be 2024. He wants to use us now to write the new stories of Riverside. Okay, thank you for listening.